When an avoidant stays away after hurting you, the first phase is internal conflict. They didn't plan to disappear. It's not indifference, it's panic disguised as calm. Their system has gone into emotional lockdown. The same defense that protected them from getting hurt now isolates them from repairing what they damaged. Deep down, they feel the sting of guilt, but guilt is unbearable for someone who equates being wrong with being unsafe. So instead of reaching out, they retreat. Silence is their shield. It's the only way they know how to control the chaos they've created. But that silence, while protecting them from immediate discomfort, slowly starts eating them alive. When they hurt you, something shifts in their internal balance. Avoidants build their self-worth around the illusion of composure. They pride themselves on not needing anyone, not depending, not breaking down. But the moment they see they've caused real pain to someone they cared about, their facade cracks. They feel exposed, vulnerable, powerless. That powerlessness is the most intolerable feeling to them. Because to feel powerless is to be reminded of every moment in their past where love and safety didn't coexist, where connection meant rejection, where trying to fix things ended in disappointment. So they freeze. They convince themselves that staying away is the noble thing to do. I'm giving them space. They're better off without me. I'll only make it worse. But these are lies the ego tells to avoid facing shame. Their distance isn't peace, it's paralysis. They're caught between two opposing forces, guilt and fear. Guilt tells them to go back and repair. Fear tells them that closeness will only make things worse. And because fear is stronger, they obey it. Yet that obedience doesn't soothe them, it torments them. Because love and avoidance cannot coexist peacefully in one heart. The more they suppress, the more the suppressed feelings start leaking out through anxiety, sleepless nights, and random waves of sadness they can't explain. In this stage, the avoidant becomes hyper-aware of your absence. Every reminder of you becomes a trigger. They notice things they ignored before, the way you used to text at certain hours, the phrases you said, the small rituals you shared. But instead of reaching out, they turn those reminders into reasons to hide. They tell themselves you've moved on, that you're angry, that they don't deserve forgiveness. It's easier to assume rejection than to risk it. They create a story in their mind where disappearing is the only way to protect you from their emotional chaos. But underneath that rationalization is grief. Grief they don't yet have the language to express. The tragedy of this stage is that they still care, often more than they admit. They replay conversations in their head, dissecting every word they said, wondering when exactly things started falling apart. They think of what they could have done differently, but can't face the vulnerability required to say it aloud. So they do the only thing they know how to do. They distance themselves further, believing time will fix what courage cannot. But time doesn't heal avoidance, it magnifies regret. The silence that once felt like control now begins to feel like punishment. Emotionally, they start oscillating between longing and suppression. One day they'll miss you so intensely it hurts to breathe. The next, they'll numb themselves, convincing their mind that it's over and that they never needed the connection anyway. This internal pendulum swing is their nervous system trying to balance two truths. I want closeness, and closeness is dangerous. The result is exhaustion. They begin to feel detached from everything, not just you. Work feels meaningless. Conversations feel shallow. They might appear calm, but their detachment isn't serenity, it's emotional depletion. And still, they think about you constantly. They imagine you moving on, finding peace, laughing again. A part of them feels relief because you deserve that. Another part feels grief because they know they can't give it. That duality breaks something inside them. For the first time, they start realizing that avoidance doesn't protect them from pain, it guarantees it. They start seeing that the cost of control is connection. But instead of acting on this realization, they freeze again, unsure of how to undo the damage. Their mind starts rationalizing again. Maybe they don't want to hear from me. It's been too long. They've probably forgotten. But none of these are true. They're not staying away because they want to. They're staying away because they don't believe they can face you without losing control of the story that keeps them safe. They fear being seen as the villain, fear hearing the truth about the hurt they caused, fear that apologizing will make them vulnerable again. So they do nothing. And that nothing becomes everything. What they don't realize yet is that their silence speaks louder than their presence ever did. You interpret it as apathy, but it's fear. You see distance, but it's self-punishment. You feel abandoned, but they feel unworthy. It's a tragic misunderstanding, two people feeling pain from the same wound, but in opposite directions. They stay away not because they stopped caring, but because caring has become too heavy to hold. And in trying to protect themselves from the shame of hurting you, they end up creating the very loneliness they were trying to avoid. That's the heartbreak of this phase. They're suffering too, but their pride and fear won't let them show it. In the second phase, the avoidant stays away because shame becomes louder than love. This is the shame that says, if I come close, I'll be exposed. And exposure, to an avoidant nervous system, feels like danger. After they hurt you, they don't only fear your anger, they fear what your pain will confirm about them. They fear hearing, in your voice, the truth they've been dodging. They cause damage, and now they're responsible for facing it. So they choose distance, not because distance is what they want, but because distance is where their ego can breathe. Distance lets them avoid being seen as the one who failed. Distance lets them keep the image of being strong, untouchable. Distance buys time to build a story where they were justified, overwhelmed, misunderstood, or simply not ready. And here's the trap. Many avoidants convince themselves that staying away is care. They tell themselves, I'm giving them space, when what they really mean is, I can't stand being seen as the one who hurt them. Shame doesn't say, I made a mistake. Shame says, I am the mistake. When someone believes they are the problem, they don't move toward repair, they move toward hiding. They assume you'll judge them, reject them, or break them down with questions they can't answer. So they reject themselves first. They disappear before you can confirm their worst fear, and then they call it self-control, even though it's self-protection. In this phase, they replay the relationship like a courtroom case, not to understand you, but to defend themselves. They focus on the moments you were emotional, the times you reacted, the nights you needed reassurance, because those details reduce their guilt. If they can label you too intense, they don't have to face that their distance created the intensity. If they can reduce your pain to overthinking, they don't have to face that their inconsistency produced the confusion. The story becomes a shield that protects their pride, but it also keeps them stuck, and yet their body keeps telling the truth. They miss you in flashes, a song, a place, a certain hour, and the ache appears. They see something you would have loved, and their chest tightens. They notice the emptiness where your steady presence used to sit. But instead of turning those feelings into repair, they turn them into more shame. Why do I miss them if I can't be what they need? Why did I shut down again? What's wrong with me? And the more they ask, the more they freeze. Because shame makes vulnerability feel like humiliation. This is why they hover without returning. They might watch your stories, check your profile, ask about you through mutual friends, because observing is safer than engaging. Observing gives them closeness without responsibility. Sometimes they send a breadcrumb, a casual, hope you're okay, not to rebuild, but to test whether they're still accepted. If you respond with full emotion, they can panic and retreat, because now they feel the pressure of accountability. If you respond with coldness, they can retreat and tell themselves you never cared, so they don't have to risk being rejected. What you need to understand is this: shame can make an avoidant act like the opposite of what they feel. If they feel guilty, they go distant. If they miss you, they stay silent. If they care, they hide it behind coldness. Because caring is a doorway to vulnerability, and vulnerability is the place they don't trust themselves to survive. So they choose the move that keeps them in control, doing nothing, even though doing nothing still costs you your trust, your peace, and your ability to feel safe. And this is where your power returns. You don't heal them by chasing their shame. You don't rescue them from accountability by making it easy. You respect your own nervous system enough to require what love actually needs: presence, consistency, and repair. You can be kind without reopening the wound, and clear without becoming cruel. Because if they want you, they will eventually face the shame and return with humility. And if they can't, then their staying away isn't care, it's avoidance. In the third phase, the avoidant's silence starts transforming into emotional confusion. It's no longer just about guilt or fear. It's about the collision between what they feel and what they believe they're allowed to feel. They still care for you, sometimes more deeply than they can admit, but they've trained themselves to disconnect from those feelings the moment they become overwhelming. So now they're trapped in a loop of missing you, repressing it, missing you again, and pretending they don't. It's not peace, it's torment that moves in cycles. They might wake up in the morning thinking they're fine. They convince themselves that they made the right choice by staying away. That space is good, that time heals. But as the day fades and silence grows heavier, their nervous system starts replaying everything they've suppressed. Your laugh, your tone, the comfort of knowing someone truly understood them, it all resurfaces at once. That's when the cognitive dissonance begins to break them down. Their mind says, "Stay away, it's safer." But their heart whispers, "You're losing something that felt like home." The contradiction makes them restless. They scroll through their phone, hover over your name, type messages they never send, and then delete them out of fear of rejection. Every small action is loaded with hesitation, every thought an internal tug of war between craving connection and avoiding pain. At this stage, the avoidant begins to realize that their silence didn't erase the bond, it intensified it. The more they suppress, the more powerful the emotions become. What they don't understand is that detachment doesn't heal emotional connection, it distorts it. The longer they ignore it, the more it grows into obsession and regret. They start idealizing the relationship, remembering the best parts, forgetting the conflicts, and feeling haunted by the emotional safety they once rejected. It's not that they suddenly become emotionally available, it's that the emptiness inside them becomes undeniable. They start feeling a strange kind of anxiety, one that doesn't come from arguments or pressure, but from the absence of your presence. This is the point where many avoidants begin to experience emotional withdrawal symptoms, almost like an addiction. The steady connection you once provided acted as regulation for their nervous system, even when they didn't admit it. Without it, their inner world becomes unstable. They might look composed to outsiders, but inside, they're unraveling. Their sleep is inconsistent, their focus scattered, their mood unpredictable. They begin to realize that distance hasn't brought peace, it's brought instability. This phase often drives them towards self-blame. They start questioning their behavior, wondering why they can't just communicate like others do, why they sabotage what they want most. But self-blame doesn't lead to growth right away, it leads to paralysis. They sit in shame, replaying the damage they caused, yet still afraid to fix it. They fear that reaching out will expose how much they care, and that level of vulnerability feels unbearable. So they convince themselves that you're better off without them, even as they secretly hope you'll reach out first and prove them wrong. If they see you doing well, the confusion deepens. A part of them feels proud, you deserve peace. Another part feels threatened, your peace proves that you no longer need them. The very independence they once admired in you now makes them feel replaceable. This is when jealousy, regret, and longing start merging into emotional chaos. They won't admit it out loud, but the loss begins to feel irreversible, and that terrifies them more than anything. Because now they can't hide behind logic or excuses. They see that they didn't lose you because you stopped loving them. They lost you because they couldn't stay present when it mattered most. The avoidance body starts carrying what their mind denies. They might find themselves crying unexpectedly or feeling heavy sadness that makes no sense to them. They don't have the tools to process emotions, so these waves feel foreign and threatening. This is where some begin to isolate even more, trying to suppress the grief, while others begin to break open, softening, reflecting, and wondering how they became this disconnected. The truth begins to set in. Staying away didn't protect anyone, it just created two people suffering in silence. And yet even as this realization dawns, fear still whispers. Fear of rejection, fear of exposure, fear of being misunderstood. So they hesitate at the edge of vulnerability, knowing they should reach out, but convincing themselves it's too late. They keep waiting for the perfect moment to fix things, not realizing that waiting is what's breaking them. Inside, the truth keeps burning. They didn't stay away because they stopped caring. They stayed away because caring required courage they hadn't yet learned. And until they face that fear, their distance will keep costing them the very love they wish they could return to. In the fourth phase, the avoidance distance shifts into something that looks like contact, but isn't repair yet. This is the hovering stage, the breadcrumb stage, the I want access without accountability stage. They're not staying away because they don't miss you. They're staying away because facing you means facing the damage, and the damage carries emotion, and emotion carries exposure. So they try to get close in a way that keeps them safe. They reach for you indirectly, cautiously, almost like someone testing water with the tip of their finger instead of stepping in. You might see it as a random message that has no real purpose. Hey, hope you're good. Just checking in. I saw something that reminded me of you. Or they might engage silently, watching your stories, liking an old post, showing up in small ways without actually showing up. It can feel confusing because it's not nothing, but it's not the thing you need. And that's exactly the point. Hovering allows them to soothe their anxiety without committing to the vulnerability of repair. They get a hit of connection, a moment of relief, without having to say, I hurt you, and I'm sorry. This phase happens because the avoidance nervous system is stuck between longing and fear. Longing says, I want them back, I miss their warmth, I miss how safe it felt. Fear says, if I go back, I'll be judged, I'll be confronted, I'll have to explain myself, I'll fail again. So they look for the safest possible route, a half step. They want to see if the door is still open, but they don't want to walk through it and have to live inside the relationship with full responsibility. They want the comfort of your presence without the discomfort of your feelings. And your feelings are the most terrifying part for them. Not because you're wrong to have them, but because your feelings hold a mirror up to their behavior. Your pain forces them to face the truth. Their avoidance had consequences. Their silence didn't keep peace, it created wounds. Their distance didn't protect love, it starved it. That truth creates shame, and shame makes them want to hide. So they hover instead, hoping they can reconnect without triggering the emotional conversation they've been avoiding. This is also where avoidance can unintentionally reopen your wound, because breadcrumbs can feel like hope. A small message can make your heart race. A tiny sign of attention can reactivate your attachment, and suddenly you're back in the old loop, waiting, wondering, reading between lines. They may not be doing it to manipulate you consciously, but the effect can still be the same. You get pulled back into uncertainty, and they get to stay protected from accountability. The dangerous part is how quickly your nervous system can confuse contact with change. You might think, they're coming back, when really they're only checking if they still have access. And access is not the same as commitment. Access is not the same as repair. Access is not the same as emotional maturity. An avoidant can miss you deeply and still be unable to show up consistently. They can want you and still fear the cost of keeping you. They can reach out and still disappear the moment things become real. This phase often includes soft starts that avoid the real topic. They might talk about neutral things, jokes, memories, small talk. It's comfortable because it doesn't require vulnerability. But if you bring up the hurt, they may suddenly get distant again, because now the conversation becomes emotionally charged. That's the tell. When connection stays light, they stay present. When connection requires repair, they retreat. And it's not because you're too much, it's because repair requires emotional tolerance they haven't built yet. If you respond to this phase by pouring your heart out, by sending long emotional messages, by begging for clarity, you can accidentally confirm their fear that closeness equals intensity. They may pull away harder, not because they don't care, but because they feel flooded. On the other hand, if you respond with cold punishment, mocking, or revenge energy, you can confirm their fear that vulnerability equals humiliation. Either extreme feeds the avoidance defense. What breaks the cycle is calm clarity. Calm clarity looks like this: you don't chase the breadcrumb, and you don't slam the door. You respond like someone who respects themselves. Warm, but not wide open. Kind, but not available for confusion. You can answer briefly, then you can name the standard without emotion. I'm doing well. If you want to talk about what happened and repair it, I'm open to a real conversation. That sentence changes everything because it removes the game. It makes it clear that connection requires responsibility. It doesn't punish them, but it doesn't reward avoidance either. This phase is where the avoidant either grows or repeats. If they grow, they'll move from hovering into ownership. They'll stop circling and start speaking directly. They'll tolerate discomfort instead of escaping it. They'll show consistency, not just curiosity. If they repeat, they'll keep sending small signals that keep you emotionally attached while they remain emotionally protected. And you will feel it in your body, the anxiety, the waiting, the uncertainty returning. So the truth of phase 4 is simply, they're not absent because they don't care. They're absent because they don't know how to face the consequences of caring. But your healing cannot be built on interpreting breadcrumbs. Your healing is built on standards. If they want you, they will eventually come with accountability, and if they can't come with accountability, then what they want is comfort, not connection. In the 5th phase, the avoidant reaches the point where staying away stops feeling like protection and starts feeling like loss. This is the phase where reality becomes too loud to ignore, and the nervous system begins to understand what the mind kept denying. Distance didn't fix the damage, it only made it permanent. Up until now, they could hover, rationalize, send breadcrumbs, or pretend time would smooth everything over. But now time becomes the enemy, because the longer you stay gone, the more their control collapses, and control is the one thing their attachment system depends on to feel safe. This phase is marked by a painful shift. They begin to feel the absence as consequence. Not just missing you as a person, but missing the emotional safety your presence provided, the warmth, the familiarity, the quiet comfort of knowing someone cared. They start recognizing that the person they hurt didn't just walk away emotionally, they walked away psychologically. Your energy is no longer available in the same way. Your attention is no longer guaranteed. Your patience is no longer automatic. And that realization hits them like a shock, because avoidants often rely on an unspoken assumption. They'll be there when I'm ready. When that assumption dies, panic turns into regret. This is the moment they start replaying the hurt in a different way. Before, they replayed it to defend themselves. Now, they replay it to understand what they destroyed. They remember the exact look on your face when they went cold. They remember the silence they left you in. They remember the times you tried to communicate, and they shut it down. And for the first time, they don't just see your reaction, they feel your experience. They imagine what it must have felt like to be loved inconsistently, to be pulled close and pushed away, to feel hopeful one day and abandoned the next. That empathy doesn't always show outwardly, but it hits internally like a heavy weight, because it forces them to see themselves as the one who caused pain, not the one escaping it. And with that empathy comes shame. Not the small shame that motivates improvement, but the deep shame that says, I ruin what I love. This is why phase 5 can look like anger or numbness from the outside. Shame is unbearable for avoidance. They don't know how to hold it, so they try to convert it into something else: irritation, blame, coldness, pride, anything that feels less vulnerable than admitting, I messed up. But when your absence is real, even pride starts losing its power. Their old defenses don't soothe them anymore. The loneliness feels sharper, because now they can't tell themselves you're still emotionally reachable. This is also the stage where they begin to fear your independence. If you start posting, building your life, glowing, being calm, it triggers something raw. Not because they want you to suffer, but because your healing proves the relationship no longer controls you. You've stepped outside the orbit they used to manage with distance. That can create a surge of urgency in them, but it's not always pure love. It's often a mix of longing and fear of irrelevance. They want to matter again. They want to feel chosen again. They want the reassurance that they didn't lose you completely. That's why they may reach out with more emotion now, but still not enough clarity. They might say, I've been thinking about you a lot. I don't know why, but I miss you. I didn't mean to hurt you. Those are cracks in the wall, but they're not full repair yet. Here is the critical difference in phase 5. The avoidant stops seeking comfort and starts confronting consequence. If they're capable of growth, this is where it begins. They start feeling that staying away is no longer safe. It's no longer regulating. It's no longer control. It's loss, and loss hurts more than vulnerability. So they reach for courage, slowly. They may begin to take ownership without excuses. They may start asking themselves what they need to change. not to get you back instantly, but to stop repeating the pattern forever. But if they're not capable of growth, phase 5 becomes the most destructive loop. They'll reach out emotionally, pull you in, then panic and withdraw again. They'll feel regret, then defend themselves. They'll miss you, then punish you with silence. They'll want the connection, then fear the responsibility. And that loop can drag you back into pain if you mistake their urgency for transformation. This is why your standards matter most here, because phase 5 is where an avoidant is most likely to return, but also most likely to return for the wrong reasons: relief, loneliness, ego, access. You can respond with calm and clarity that separates longing from readiness. You can say, "I hear you, but I need consistency and repair. I'm not available for confusion." That sentence is not harsh. It is healthy. It tells them that missing you is not enough. Wanting you is not enough. Feeling guilt is not enough. Because if they truly want you, they will move past regret into responsibility. They will show up consistently, not just emotionally. They will face the conversation they feared. They will tolerate discomfort. They will repair what they broke. And if they can't, then their staying away may not be what they want, but it will remain what they choose. And you can't build love on someone's fear. In the 6th and final phase, the avoidant begins to face the truth they've avoided the longest. That staying away didn't protect them, it destroyed them. This is the point where all the emotional walls they built start to collapse under their own weight. The detachment that once made them feel strong now feels hollow. The silence that once felt peaceful now echoes like punishment. The very thing they used to call control starts to feel like a cage, and the one thing they swore they didn't need, connection, becomes the one thing they can't stop craving. But the tragedy is that by the time this realization fully hits, the damage has already taken root. This stage begins quietly. It's not an explosion, it's a slow unraveling. The avoidant starts feeling things they can't rationalize: deep sadness, regret, nostalgia, even jealousy. They might catch themselves thinking about you during random moments, not with the same intensity as before, but with a persistent ache that refuses to leave. Every memory becomes heavier, more vivid. They remember your laugh, your patience, your small acts of love. They start recognizing that those moments weren't ordinary, they were rare, and they lost them because they couldn't stay emotionally present when it mattered most. The guilt transforms into grief. But unlike the grief of someone who's been left, their grief is mixed with self-blame. They're not mourning what you did, they're mourning what they failed to do. They realize that the love you offered wasn't suffocating, it was safe, that your consistency wasn't control, it was security, and that their silence wasn't strength, it was fear. This kind of awakening hits hard because it exposes every excuse they've ever used to justify their behavior. They see how they turned love into a threat, how they called affection pressure, how they equated peace with boredom. And that clarity, while liberating, is excruciating. At this point, they often reach a crossroads. One path leads to growth, the other back to avoidance. Growth means facing the pain head-on, sitting in the discomfort of knowing they were wrong, admitting that they hurt someone who genuinely cared. It means learning to communicate, to stay, to repair instead of retreat. But avoidance offers an easier way out: blame, suppression, distraction. Many avoidants choose the second path first because it's familiar. They'll try to bury the pain under work, new connections, or spiritual platitudes. They'll tell themselves it's fate, that everything happens for a reason, that maybe it just wasn't meant to be. But those phrases are just shields against accountability. Still, no amount of distraction can erase what their body remembers. Every quiet night reminds them of what they lost. Every kind person they meet feels different, not worse or better, just different, because no one replicates the bond they ran from. They start realizing that the love they pushed away wasn't suffocating, it was grounding. That the connection they thought would drown them was the one that could have taught them how to breathe. They begin to understand that avoiding emotions doesn't prevent heartbreak, it guarantees it. The cost of emotional safety was emotional starvation. If they're brave, this is where transformation begins. They might start exploring why they react the way they do. They might finally seek therapy or begin reading about attachment patterns. They start tracing the roots of their fear back to the past, to moments where vulnerability led to pain, where love felt conditional, where emotions were punished instead of understood. For the first time, they see that their avoidance wasn't about you, it was about survival, and realizing that survival strategy no longer serves them is the start of real healing. But it's also deeply painful, because it means accepting that the love they lost was collateral damage in a war they were fighting with themselves. Sometimes, this awareness leads them back to you. They may reach out, not with manipulation, not with breadcrumbs, but with real vulnerability. You might get a message that feels different, slower, humbler. "I've been thinking about everything. I know I hurt you. I understand more now." Those words don't erase the past, but they show growth. Yet, not every avoidant gets there. Some remain stuck between awareness and action, haunted by the memory of what could have been but too afraid to step into what still could be. And that's where your part in this story becomes sacred. Because whether or not they come back, your healing can't depend on their courage. You've already walked through your own storm, learned to hold your own boundaries, and faced the silence they couldn't. You've proven what they could not. That real strength isn't in avoidance, it's in presence. Their staying away might not have been what they wanted, but it was what they chose. And your choice to stop waiting becomes the moment their fear meets its mirror, someone who can love deeply and still walk away when love stops being mutual. In the end, this stage isn't about punishment, it's about truth. The avoidant finally realizes that avoidance doesn't end pain, it only delays it until it becomes unbearable. That love cannot coexist with fear, and that control is the opposite of intimacy. Some will rise from this realization and learn to love differently. Others will repeat the pattern, losing again what they refused to face the first time. But either way, the lesson remains eternal. You can't outrun love without outrunning yourself.